Yeah, we're live. 7:30. We actually just got back from a hike with the little ones, as always, with Lisa and the dogs. It's awesome. But tonight we're here to talk about turbos, specifically cheap turbos. And the thumbnail that I have up is actually from a CX Racing kit for a D Series Honda. So I wanted to talk a little bit about cheap turbo kits because that's a very common question. I get that a lot. Hey, first of all, what turbo kit do you use when you're doing this? Well, I don't normally use turbo kits. Sometimes I have, like in this case, we actually installed a complete kit ish on the Civic and ran on the chassis dyno. That's done. I've done that a couple of times. Normally, when I test stuff on the engine dyno, I don't do complete kits. There have been some exceptions. That the Hellion Coyote kit was a complete kit. A couple of HP Performance kits I've tried that were complete kits. Basically, and by that I mean that they fit in the vehicle that they're intended to. These were both for Mustangs, obviously the Coyote Mustang, and then 5-liter stuff. And we've also tested some way back on the Corvette side. HP Performance had some LS stuff that we tried also. So I have done some complete stuff. A lot of times, though, when I do these turbo tests, I'll make my own turbo kit. We're just making something that fits, the way that we have to run it on the dyno. Because a lot of times when stuff is installed in a vehicle, it's packaged so that it fits around certain things in that chassis. Cross members and the exhaust and how close the radiator is and the accessories in proximity to other stuff. And it's designed to work with that. And that's not always the same. Although we usually have a lot of room on the engine dyno, there are certain things that can be in the way, the water tower necks and stuff like that. So what I do is generally put things together, like with the LS turbo that I have or the Hemi. I just make something that works so that we can test something. And the reality is that what I'm testing versus what a kit might be, if they use the same turbo and they use the same intercooler, and obviously we have the same tune, the results would be very, very comparable. One of the common quotes that I get, people, I don't know, walk into the dyno cell and we're like, oh yeah, how are you going to get that to fit in the car? I'm like, it doesn't have to fit in the car. It just has to represent what a turbo would do when you run it on that combination. And that's it. And it does that. So it translates directly to the stuff that's going in a vehicle. The differences would be, or at least the difference in performance would be, when you change something. Well, I ran the same thing that you did, except, and then everything after that except is different. Except for the big thing on the turbo is the exhaust. Well, you had an open 4-inch exhaust, and I ran a 2.5-inch exhaust with mufflers and cats and everything. Well, it probably is going to be different. But what I want to talk about tonight is our turbo kits. And because, we get guys asking, well, have you tested this turbo kit? No, I haven't tested that turbo kit. But does that kit work? And does it? And so we have to define what you mean by work. So let's say that, and each kit can be different too. And we need to talk about that a little bit too. Because what does the kit include? If a kit includes a turbo and one or two exhaust manifolds, that's kind of the bare minimum. If it just includes a turbo, that's not really a kit. Unless the turbo has, a header or a flange or something for it, then I guess you could technically call it a kit. But a kit is going to usually incorporate more than just one thing. So if it has a, exhaust manifold that has a provision for a cross-under pipe that uses a stock exhaust manifold, that can still kind of be a kit because they made a dedicated manifold for it. It mounts the turbo. And then you're up to your own devices to make the rest of the stuff, whatever it is, and to make it work. Then you have on the flip side of that is you have kits, complete kits that have everything. And I mean everything. So everything from, you have a running motor and it's not turbocharged. And then you have a running motor that's turbocharged and it all works. So that kind of kit would be so complete that it would include injectors, pump, tune, the turbo, the wastegate, all the plumbing, all of the clamps, all the hoses, all the aluminum tubing that you need for the cold side, everything that you need for the hot side, the exhaust coming off of the turbo, the downpipe connecting to whatever your exhaust is or some other kind of exhaust. Maybe it includes a complete 3-inch exhaust or 4-inch exhaust or whatever it is. Includes the mounting brackets for the intercooler, everything. And so, and hopefully instructions, because sometimes some of the turbo kits also don't come with instructions. And so it becomes up to you, and you have to decide, well, if I buy something that is a turbo and an exhaust manifold, am I capable of making the rest of the stuff? With all the stuff, the information that's online and the good people here and photos that you see and all that stuff, if you're a welder, you can probably get that done. I used to take stuff to a local smog shop and just tell them what I wanted. And it's not a smog shop, a muffler shop. And they would just do the stuff that we needed. I would just have them build stuff that I could then run on the dyno, exhaust systems. I'm like, sometimes I take a motor over there on an engine stand in the back of the truck and say, hey, this needs to connect from here to here. And you need to make that happen. They go, okay, yeah, we can do that. No problem. And they would make it happen. So all that stuff is possible. So the example that I have in the photo, we'll take a look at that thumbnail. So here's the thumbnail that I'm talking about here. So you can see this is a D series. This is the exhaust manifold. It came with a turbo. It came with a wastegate. It came with a downpipe. It came with an intercooler. I'm not showing that, but it has the piping going to and from the intercooler. And it has a section of downpipe that you then connect to your exhaust or some other exhaust. It had some braided lines that I think were an option to run the oil feeds to the turbo. It had a drain for it. So it had a lot of stuff. But what the kit didn't have, and this is very important because it makes it much more problematic, is that the kit didn't have any sort of tuning. So what that meant, and this is a really common problem, especially among Honda guys, but unfortunately, it's really easy to put a turbo setup like this because it's just all you're doing is taking the stock exhaust manifold off and bolting this exhaust manifold on. It just happens to have a turbo on it. And then you have to run an oil feed line. They show you where to take the oil feed off of. It's very easy. You do have to put a hole in your oil pan, but that's very easy too. And then route some, mount the intercooler up in front of the radiator, run the discharge tube to the intercooler, and then run from the intercooler back up into the throttle body. Hook up a line to the wastegate and stuff. It's not really that difficult. It's something that a first timer guy can actually get done. It's kind of cool. Oh, I put a turbo on there. Great. That's not the important part. I mean, the turbo is important and it is good, but it's not the thing that's actually going to make it work. You can, drive it around, but with stock injectors and a stock computer, you're going to have way too much timing and not enough fuel. Both of those are big problems. And so you can do, some of the things that we used to do back in the day. And also it might be that your factory computer also doesn't recognize boost and wigs out. So there are ways to get around some of this stuff, and guys have figured that out. You can put an FMU on it and raise the fuel pressure to add fuel. And for low boost, that kind of works. You can turn the distributor to take timing away, but then you're taking timing away all the time. The best way to do it, and you can do sensor manipulation and other things, and that you also need to add a different fuel pump, because especially if you're raising the fuel pressure, the pump becomes a critical thing. The pump is a critical thing anyway, because a factory fuel pump is not designed to supply fuel for turbocharged power. It's a little easier for it to do it when it's not 100 PSI, but it's still not designed to flow that much fuel. So you do need a fuel pump. You need injectors, and that's another way with the Honda guys that they would do it. They'd go, okay, well, I've got 19s or 24s or whatever. I'm going to put 30s or 36s in, and then just have the computer, closed loop tune the other stuff out. And that does work up to a point. I've run bigger injectors on my D series with the Jackson Racing supercharger, and it actually worked fairly okay. We did have to take timing out of it. We put water injection on it because that particular one didn't have an intercooler on it, and that worked okay. It's not ideal. The best way to do it, obviously, is, and the nice thing about that with the Honda application, and we see that with other stuff now too, Fords and LSs and stuff, is to actually tune it. So you go in and put the injector size that you need for your intended power level, and then go in and change the tune on it so that the tune now represents what is necessary for that bigger injector. So you're gonna have to take a bunch of fuel away, down low. Well, you're probably gonna have to take a bunch of fuel away, except for the very top. You're gonna have to take fuel away because when this thing is driving in any sort of NA thing and not boosted, it's gonna, and you have the same duty cycle going to it that you had with a 19-pound injector. If you have a 30 or 36 or 40 or an 80-pound injector, it's going to supply too much fuel. So you have to go in and give it the right amount of fuel under all these conditions, and that's pretty not difficult to do with a good air fuel meter, and and the ability to tune that. And then you have to go in and you also have to tune the timing. So you, under NA conditions, it can have very similar to the factory NA stuff. But once you go into boost, you're going to want to take timing away. So you're going to have less timing when you go into boost. And hopefully, whatever you're tuning with, Honda or Chrome or whatever you're using, that it has maps for boosted applications. And then so you have to run a 2-bar, 3-bar, 4-bar, 10-bar map sensor, whatever it is you're running. The thing is that a lot of those things, and they're critical elements. The fuel pump, the injector size, and the tune are critical elements for making the turbo work. A lot of guys, like I said, with these Honda applications, like I'm showing here, is that they'll put that on the car. Okay, I got boost. Well, I need more fuel. I know I need more fuel. I'm going to put injectors in it. Okay, good. It's ready to go. Stock pump, no timing taken away. And they go out and wring it out and blow their motor up. Oh, these things are junk. No, they're not. They're actually really good. And in the case of the one that I've shown, that's a CX Racing one, fairly inexpensive. It's a cast manifold, has a provision fairly central for the wastegate, which works because some of the older ones, like the drag manifolds, when the wastegate provision was on one exhaust port, not very good at controlling boost. This one was fairly good. It worked fairly well, even with that inexpensive wastegate. The one thing I can say about this, and we can take a look at this so you can see it, all of that worked fairly well. The cast manifold fit, the turbo fit. This obviously doesn't have AC. It has the small radiator over here. You can see the turbo here. The one thing I can say about this is that if you notice the position of the turbo relative to the radiator, yes, it's drawing in hot air. I am firmly against that. So having some sort of air intake going across into the fender well or something, much better way to go. Got to adjust my setup here. Much better way to go. So there are things that you're going to want to look at, but the basic kit itself, like from the CX Racing deal, I'm gonna have to get my things wigging out here a little bit. The basic kit worked very well. We were able to make, with the turbo that they supplied, I think we were able to make like 300 at the tire. So I think it was a TO4E or something that they supplied with this turbo. It had a fairly good size front mount air to air on it. We put enough injector in it. It had chrome on it. We were tuning it. And Ernie, shout out to Ernie Mina, who used to be at Westech. He did all the tuning on it, and it worked out really well. Relatively big power. For this one was an otherwise stock D16. GTA Nation, thank you. I'll get with you in just a sec, and so I can answer your question. But we ended up putting a cam in it and then changing the head gasket and put head studs and did some stuff on it, and it eventually made, it exceeded 300 at the tire. So it did fairly well. And we were very excited about it. But the thing, the reason for having this discussion is that when you're looking at these kits, understand what their definition of a kit is. Look at all the parts that are on there and then figure the other things that you want. And more specifically, make sure you take a look at what's going to be required to tune this combination. because it's very, very critical. You have to have enough fuel pump, enough injector, and then the ability to control timing and the ability to adjust air, fuel, and timing under boost. Very, very important. You can kind of finagle it, but usually what happens is you end up doing it right the second time after you try to put an FMU and turn the distributor or not worry about it, because something bad will happen. I know, I speak from experience because I've tried that and we've run through that problem before, and you end up blowing up the motor because maybe, let's say it works at 5 pounds, but it doesn't work very well at 10 pounds. And that's usually what happens on these things. So let's see what's going on here. Let's see. Good evening. Going to E85 on my TBS 1900, 13 pounds on a 5.3, 799 head, stock bottom end. From our power for less dollar per gallon than 93 with octane booster, costs more long-term engine sludge oil. So you're going to E85. I highly recommend that. Your supercharged combination will definitely like that. And I'm hoping that has some kind of camshaft in it with that TBS blower, because if not, you don't want to stock camshaft in there. A camshaft will go a long way to making that thing better. But I think you probably have one. Let's see what you guys got going on Saturday night. Richard, my oil pressure sensor on my LS keeps blowing oil out of the plug. This is the second OEM unit. Have you ever heard of this? Is it, you mean it's blowing it's breaking the diaphragm in the sensor? I can't kill my GT45 at 18 PSI for 4 years. That's good. If you get, I think that they last a long time. Google, 75 pounds at 6,500 is well within line. And 42 pounds at idle is good. That's about where mine is. $90 watching, 25 likes. Those rookie numbers, that's right. Get those numbers up. Yeah, there are 46 likes now. Just bought a strong running 3,500 van with a 6-liter. Has only 20,000 on the motor and 40,000 on the LA. What did you pay for the van? Probably going to swap it in a C10 pickup. So you're going to put the transmission in there too, the 4L80? Got a high flow melting pump. Yeah, you don't have to worry about having too much fuel pressure. I mean, oil pressure. We've run stuff that's over 100. I want an all-wheel drive express van so you can hook up. Sadly, I've got about a month's worth of content to catch up on here. Hopefully Monday I can binge watch. There you go. I've started binge watching House of Cards. I've never seen it before. I've been going down the political drama path. I did The Diplomat, and then Madam Secretary, and then now House of Cards. Your oil pump is not hurting your engine. Mexico City's in the house. Francisco. Julius, you just put a stock Barra. What year Barra is that? And what version is it? I wish VVT on LS aftermarket cams were more refined with similar Honda-like horsepower per liter outputs, making Screamer small blocks with wide power bands more achievable. It's going to take a whole lot more than advancing and retarding the camshaft, because Hondas have VTEC, which are two distinct cam profiles, and some of them have VTEC and VVT. Let's see. I'm scrolling back. I'm scrolling. Keep them doggy scrolling. Everybody saying hi. That's good. I like that. A little camaraderie. Keep that going. Positive, you know. I did a blow-through card from CSU. It's important to upgrade the fuel pump and regulator. Found out the hard way. Yeah, you need a pump and a regulator that will keep up with the fuel flow at pressure. We ran into that problem on the dyno at a fairly high, pressure and power level, but we did run into that. On B18C, could you use the same Holley HP EFI unit that you use for the dyno runs? I don't remember what we probably could take the, I don't know what the distributor signal is, but I think that the later B16, I thought that they had crank sensors on them. We've run back in the day, we ran the Hondas with a fast, so I'm sure that the Holley could do it too. Can you get an eBay turbo with a carbon seal? I've never seen one. Do blow-through cars work on the street? Yeah, there are guys driving them around. I've never tried to do it. We've only run them on the dyno. GTA Nation, Truck Norris cam, good. Valve Springs, comp, rocker. What rockers did you get? £80 injectors and dual 450s. The LT1 lives. The Torque Head 24X kit, no more OptiSpark. Nice. So you've LS swapped your LT1, at least as far as the ignition. GW2, if you have 14.7 pounds of boost, you're more than likely going to more than double the fuel flow requirement, because you'd be going from, if it's an NA motor, you'd be going from, let's say 12.8, and on a boosted motor, you'd go down to 11.8 or 11.5 or 11.0, whatever, however rich you want to run it. So it's going to be more than twice. Stage 2 MLX cam 28230. That's a sloppy stage 2 cam, but we have tests of that all the time. We show that. We've run that a bunch. Tim, the map sensor reads how much pressure the turbo is supplying, and then allows you to adjust that portion of the map. And if you have a 1-bar sensor, that's NA. If you have a 2-bar, that takes care of NA and up to 14.7 pounds of boost. And for each bar after that, it's another 14.7 pounds of boost. Java, thank you very much. Would I be able to throw in a bigger cam and exhaust system on a 350 Vortec and gain 100 to 150 horsepower? No. What are your favorite brands for budget turbos? I've had good luck with every one that I've used. So I've used Six Racing, we've used DNA, I've used Max Speeding, and every one of them have worked. That's why I like to hear Getaway. You get points for that. Honestly, 95% or 90% of the YouTube I watch is this channel. It's perfect. But I'm a little disappointed that's only 90. I mean, you're still cheating on me 10%. Turbo Centra, what's up? Foot pressure needs to rise 1-to-1 with boost. Or if you have an FMU, then it's 12-to-1. Where's the pizza man? I know, it is Saturday night. We went to Benihana's last night. It was awesome. It always is. Google Richard, my dad's here. Tell him that the truck cam for a 5.3 with an LS3 springs. He doesn't want anything crazy. Yeah, you can run the any cam that's 550 lift. You can run with those LS3 springs. Or if you want, if you want to do it really cheap, you can run the Truck Norris NSR cam with the stock 706 springs. This still seems weird to me, but you can. Get whole set turbos. I've run whole set turbos too, but they were new ones. They were not ones from the wrecking yard. The guys from HP Performance had their kits came with whole set turbos, and they worked very well. Dual quad 283 made more torque than horsepower, even with the biggest cam. I know. I don't understand that, and I don't understand how it did that. Well, what I'm thinking is that this motor wanted to make a lot more power, but was held up by that induction system, by the dual quad stuff. Because I don't think that's they didn't do anything to the intake manifold. They didn't port it. They didn't do anything. So it's a factory 283 dual quad intake manifold with a motor that wants a lot more. So I don't remember. I didn't. Now that I think about it, I should have looked at to see if there was. I don't know if they had it hooked up, but if they had a vacuum line on there, we could have seen if that was restrictive. Once we fix the cam sensor issue, it fires off at about the second rotation engine. Won't be able to get it on the tuner tweaked for the trip. Should be good. Good. Gray top, first gen, 204, same as what you got sent. I'll email you the dyno sheets. Cool. We have all of the correction factors. We can use any of the correction factors. But are you running it on an engine dyno or a chassis dyno? Sean will get a good test run in Moab. That'll be fun. Sentra, did you get your Turbo Sentra motor running again? An HX 4035 was run on my buddy's built B18, B20 block. It was laggy. That's pretty good size. What cheap turbo kits were we talking about? I just went through like 15 or 20 minutes of that, but all kinds of them. The one that's in the photo is a CX Racing kit. Oh, we do need a poll. That's right, Special Agent. I'm glad you're keeping me on my toes. Would you buy a cheap turbo kit for your motor? So where are my cheap guys out there? My cheap turbo kit guys. What's an FMU? It's called fuel management unit. And what it is a rising rate fuel pressure regulator. So what it does basically is you install this on the return line back when they had return lines on regulators. And what it did was under boost, it would clamp the return line shut and just jack the fuel pressure up to the at a rate of 12 to 1. Some of them there were less. You could 10 to 1, 6 to 1, 5 to 1. I made one that's 2 to 1, which is a little better than 1 to 1, so you get a little bit of enrichment. The 12 to 1 stuff is just ridiculous because as soon as you get into boost, it just like jams fuel, raises the pressure over 100 psi. It makes life hard on the pump, but they did work, and that's the way that blower kits and turbo kits and stuff back in the day. That's the way they used to come, was with an FMU. So I'm scrolling back. My fuel system is way overkill. Good, that's what you want. Oh, Jim Brown passed away? He was a heck of a running back. Who sells the adapter? Put the Ford blower on Chevy LS engines, and do they fit in a C6 Corvette engine bay? I don't know about the hood height or any of that stuff. Tom Demuse Engineering did the kit that I tested. My Sentra didn't have a map sensor. What about a small block Ford 289 with a turbo? It would be the same as a 5-liter with a 302 with a turbo, or a 351 or any other Ford. It's just a little bit smaller. It's going to start out making less power. Handy to put a supercharger on your F-150 2-valve. You're going to need a bigger fuel pump, bigger injectors, tuning. Does your motor have a mass air meter on it? Maybe a bigger mass air meter would help. And then some sort of good induction system going to the throttle body and mass air and all that stuff. Sorry, sometimes I watch guitar related. Do you have a Fender Strat? That's right, I speak guitar. You got a plug-in harness that connects to coils and sensors. On the new ECU has a plug for the harness, and the other L2 unplugs are the same. Sean, it also, he was saying Tom Demuse too, uses a Holley low ram. They have them, he has them different ways. The one I tested was not with a Holley low ram. It was actually with an intake manifold that I think was originally designed for an Eaton kit, an Eaton Cathedral Port kit. That's what the lower manifold was. Does ignition have to pull timing under boost when using a blow through? Yes, under any kind of boosted application, you will want less timing than you do when it's NA. Wondering if going E85 with my supercharged 5.3 is going to be harmful to the engine long term. Moto IQ Challenge states the risk of engine sludge on E85 when also clog injectors. No, and I like Mike Kojima. He's a good guy. But I mean, look at all the people that are running E85 and stuff. The engine sludge thing is if guys don't change their oil, because you're going to get, blow by and fuel into the oil. So you're going to need to change that. But the injector clogging thing, that only becomes a problem if you let it sit for a really, really long time. And shame on Mike for saying that E85 is anything but wonderful. Tim, on my turbo car, how would you decide whether to go down 1 or 2 ranges for colder plugs? My Autolite 3924s make the engine sound better and louder. I don't know how you discern any sort of difference from any kind of spark plug. Since there's no change in power at all, I don't know how one would do anything compared to the other. We've tested heat ranges going from like a 16 to a 31. So that's endless steps colder. And it doesn't do anything to power. As long as the spark plug is firing, it doesn't do anything. So Underdog getting back on the open road with a 460 motorhome. I like it. Richard, do you think I'll see a 20 horsepower gain replacing my 78 millimeter intake going to a 102 fast? What intake is it that you're replacing? I don't care about the throttle opening size. I just care about which intake manifold it is. Because the throttle opening size is not the thing that's gaining power with a fast. It's one of the things that helps, but it's not the thing that makes the power. So a chassis dyno can't afford. What kind of chassis dyno is it, Julius? Found out the Harbor Freight engine stands are no match for a fully dressed 8.1. Really? I have one on there right now. It's been on there for, I don't know, a year or whatever. My On3 turbo kit for the Fox body was not good. Tim, that's not good. Are we considering On3 turbos as cheap turbos? I think that they would be considered that, right? What's an On3 turbo kit cost? Should see the stock twin turbos for a Subaru engine I got for an 03 Subaru Outback. They're so tiny. I've seen the tiny little Volkswagen ones too. An On3 is a lot cheaper than a Garrett. That's right. Any chance you know where I can find a rebuild kit for a Turbonex Hurricane 7668? Since Turbonex won't answer me about a max speeding built GT45 to replace it. I don't have any idea. Turbonex is still in business though, aren't they? Noodles, what's up? Can you put a carbon seal on a cheap turbo? I think you can. You just need to find the seal that's the right size seal for whatever that cheap turbo is. And I don't know if they use I would imagine that they would use a common size in those. Yeah, Tim, I don't understand that. I'm not saying that you don't hear what you hear. I'm just saying I've never heard any difference. And the dyno also doesn't show any difference at all. It was a secondhand guitar. It was a Stratocaster with a whammy bar. Nice. You got to get the wah, 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 wah. Bought a secondhand guitar. Chances are you'll go far if you get in with the right bunch of fellows. Ethanol boils at 173, so as long as you let your engine warm up, oil dilution shouldn't be an issue with the E85. Got a Master Power 70 from a box of old parts I got from a buddy. Reckon it'll spool on my 2-liter. That's been worked by a massive speed system and cams. Did you say it's a 70 millimeter turbo? That's bigger than the stuff that we ran on a 2-liter Zetec. I think we ran a GT66 on it. Intake is an OG LS1. Yeah, if it's an original LS1, you're definitely going to gain 20 horsepower with a fast. So somebody pointed out that I misspelled something on the poll, although it didn't seem to slow anybody else down. The On 3, $1,900 for a Fox body kit. Complete with hot side, cold side. Does the On 3 kit come with any injectors or programming or any fueling or anything? DynoJet, cool. Yeah, we'll have DynoJet data. I have an old DNR motoring setup sitting around. I plan to use it on a small block Chevy. I put a turbo in my Kai truck. Nice. At what age do you consider a vehicle to be old? Oh, that's probably subjective, right? Is there any way to guess what a VSR 6262 T3 turbo is worth? Is it a 62 millimeter? Well, you could know exactly. Just call Byron and he'll tell you. I'm sure he's tested it. I'm sure he's had lots of people that have run it. Okay, Butcher, you're out, man. Are the LS706 heads the best bang for the buck? An LS706 head, I wouldn't go search for because they're normally on the motors that I get from the wrecking yard, either a 4.8 or a 5.3, which are normally the ones that I would get. Unless I get lucky like I did and found the L33 that had 799 heads on it. Honestly, if it was the aluminum block, I wouldn't care that it had 706 heads on it because they work. All of those heads work really well. Inherited my dad's truck, 4.8 liter, stuck lifter. The lifter's stuck. What do you recommend other than replacement lifter and tray set? Can you get the lifter out? And did the stuck lifter damage the camshaft? I would definitely look at that. Since I'm going 85 full time, should I go NGK Iridium plugs instead of the colder plugs? No, you should, under boost, you should still have a colder plug regardless of what metallurgy that you want. .62 millimeter. Getaway, if that's a VS Racing turbo, you need to call the guys at VS Racing, and they'll tell you how much power that turbo will support. Little off topic, I've been collecting, just bought a 64 Grand Prix, very nice, 64 Bonneville and 67 Bonneville, very cool. On the thumbnail photo, did you have any issue with the boost creep? I didn't. This one actually worked very well. I have had that in the past with the drag style manifolds, if you're familiar with those, where the wastegate flange was, the outlet was basically on one port, on one exhaust port, and not central. At least this one is semi-central, and this one worked pretty well. Cam has some scoring on it. One of the lifters is clapping and clattering terribly. So I would look at, did you take the cam out too, or are you just looking at the cam? If the motor is out, is the motor out? If the motor is out, I would use this as an opportunity to swap the cam. How many engines do you think you bought from the record in the last 20 years? I don't know. Some weekends I would get 3 or 4 of them. I broke my Iridium spark plugs in my turbo engine. I've never had that problem with any of it. I ran Denso Iridiums in a lot of stuff. And even in my Civic, the one that we set the land speed records with, I drove them around like that for a really long time. What's better, pretzel crust pizza or cheap turbo? I say I wouldn't choose between those two. I would definitely have both, because that's why you get the cheap turbo, is so that you can afford pretzel crust. Is a Corvette servo worth it? Yes, definitely. I speak from experience, as I have in my 4L60E a Corvette servo. That's what makes it. That's a Corvette trans out there. 68 Impala fastback and a 61 Chrysler. Is it easier to tune a blow-through carb than EFI? I don't think so. I think tuning EFI is way easier. But the stuff that I do is wide open throttle, so that's really the easiest part of tuning it. The rest of it probably is more complicated. Does anybody know what the first American motor to make 1 horsepower per cubic inch was? Somebody let me know, and we'll scroll that. How much does a cam swap with supporting mods, no stall, cost on a Gen 3? I don't know. There are some cams out there that are pretty cheap. And when we do cam swaps, we don't change the lifters. In fact, we don't change anything else. We just change the camshaft. What you'd have to do, though, if you have an otherwise stock motor, we hardly ever have that. But if you can, there are cams that you can put in that don't require spring changes, so you could get away with that and not buying springs. But springs are also cheap. Put the LS3 springs in, or any kind of cheap Beehive spring or whatever. The other thing you will need, though, on a stock application, normally if you put a cam in that makes any power, is you're going to need injectors, and you're going to need a tune. Just took a peek looking in. Yeah, I plan on getting a low lift cam for it. Would you recommend LS style lifters? Yeah, we use the stock stuff all the time on all the stuff that we run. Square Body's doing well. It's been handling 20 PSI. Nice. Some people think that the 440 was the first motor to make. A 440 was never rated at 440 horsepower. There's no factory one that was rated that high. Although I don't think that that's somebody's answer, right? It's just about something else. David Wills LS1. No, it happened way before that. 283 Corvette. That's a good one. Looking at the 462 valve Mustang 985 GT for my first car. That's a good one. Looks like 283. That's not true. I did some searching because somebody was talking about, when I posted the thing on the 283 stroker, the dual quad one. Somebody said, yeah, the 283 was the first American motor that had 1 horsepower per cubic inch. But Chrysler had a 300B. It was 354 inches in 55 or 56. That was rated at 355 horsepower. So they had a 354. I'm sure that it was a Hemi. That was rated at 355 horsepower. So they made more than 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Would a GT45 be a good size turbo for a 4.2 liter V6? It depends on what kind of power you're going to make. That's like a 700 or 750 horsepower turbo. If you're trying to make 500 or 600, I would go with something smaller. And I've never tried Pulsar turbos, Carlos. Change oil and found needle bearings on my magnet on my 5.3. Is it fixable? Does it still run? You need to change. It's going to be a rocker, so you need to look at the rockers. Yeah, Glenn, you're running 30 PSI on 91 octane. Yeah, that should be perfect. Lots of piston engine aircraft engines. Would you recommend max speeding rods? I've never run max speeding rods on anything. I have run some Speedmaster stuff, and they seem to work. The way that I look at that situation is, I don't know that I would use those for my double throwdown race car. But given what we've done with factory rods, I don't see how those could be worse than a factory rod. Uh, 327. Yeah, it's not a 327. The 283 came out way before the 327. And the 327 made more than, they had a 365 horse and a 375 horse version. $1960 Ford 352 made 360. Yeah, that's way after all this though. Steve Morris blew up the new SMX. Yeah, that's probably not cheap. Size twin turbos would make 1200 to 1400. That's a 200 horsepower is a big gap in there. 1400 is going to be GT45 territory. Twin GT45s. The way that you could get more response from that is if you got expensive turbos. $1960 Ford 352 Police Interceptor. 360 horsepower is a lot from a 350-inch motor. That's like LT1 territory. It was the 283 that was factory fuel injected in the 60s. It wasn't in the 60s. It was in 57. Have you seen the steel turbos with no lubrication? Yeah, the guys from Comp Turbo had some, and I think somebody else. Richard, do you hate electric cars? No, I don't. I think not being open to other technology is foolish. It's like not being open to other opinions. You heard of the rocket anti-lag? Basically, you run a combustor to keep the turbo spool at all times. So I'm guessing lots of bleed air from the compressor is involved. I've not heard of that. Found a 327 Corvette at a family stash today. Nice. Looks like it's 3-1 in favor of cheap turbos and pizza money. I like that. Cheap turbos are good. Because I remember back in the day, turbo kits were not cheap for a long time. Putting twin GT45s on my 454. Any internals I should get to make it live a decently long time. I don't know what you're doing with it. And are you trying to use all of those GT45s? I saw some dyno results from MTI Racing where L92 truck intake was beating an LSXR by 20 horsepower, 20 foot-pounds. I've never seen that. An L92 is going to be a rec port. So a rec port, I've tested rec port, the LY6 truck intake manifold, which I think is the same as that. And I've compared it to the LS3 intake, and it makes the same power. And the Fast didn't lose any power compared to the stock one, but it didn't really gain anything. But 20 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds is something's going on somewhere. Basically, there's a good amount of unburnt fuel in the exhaust. So you're afterburning him. When would we see you build a turbo vehicle for a street or the track? I can show you one right here. This is an engine dyno channel. It's not an engine or not a car building channel. So what I do is demonstrate what things work and what things don't in terms of power. But I have a Bonneville cars and road race cars, and so I've taken a lot of the stuff and used it on the track, mostly road racing and top speed stuff. I don't know where my fancy photo is of my Civic. What about cheap superchargers? I have a couple of those. The problem was that an M90 doesn't support very much power. It's good for smaller motors, and it can definitely help add power for smaller ones. But unless you had two of them or more, it would not work very well on a bigger one. What injector would I need for 800 wheel horsepower? 80-pound injectors will get you there on gas. If you're going to do it on an E85, then you need something bigger than that. AJ, I'll make sure that I put everything through spell check. Do you recommend an aftermarket stall on a Chupacabra truck cam and a Gen 353? A truck Norris cam, I think guys have used stock converters, but it will run better with a little bit more than stock converter. I have 10.7 to 1, 10.75 compression on my NA 6-liter. Could I run a small amount of boost with a turbo? Yes, you can. It's going to be a function of your octane that you're using. Richard, start hitting the gym, get a 69 charger, and drink Corona beer. No on the Corona beer, and I'm not a fan of 69 chargers. I like a 71 CUDA much better, and an AAR CUDA would be even cooler. How much horsepower will a GT25 turbo make? I don't know which one you're looking at. I don't know if it's the offshore one or if it's actually a real Garrett one. Drag racing is cool too. I just have not built drag race cars. Four three with 10 to 1 compression. The Naughty's biggest cam. What kind of motor you think it would be? I don't know what your question is. Richard, ever use Thermotech exhaust wrap? We have. We used it on the Bonneville car. We wrapped the exhaust only because the way that our turbo system worked is where the turbo was on the Honda motor, the discharge tube came up and across the engine bay over the exhaust. So we did thermal wrap it, and we put a shield, an Inconel shield on it too. Just to we don't care about turbo response or anything, but we were trying to get heat off of the discharge tube. Road race cars at drag race also. I ran my road race cars many times at the drag strip because we would do that to make sure that they were working right back when I was doing World Challenge and Bridgestone Supercar. So we run the supercharged Mustang at the drag strip, trying to get it to hook up on these. These weren't even sticky road race tires. They weren't even really good street tires. They were Bridgestones, and there was a reason that they were called stones is because they were terrible. Eric, the M90 is good on an L67. Does the Mercurizer intake for the 4.3 really work? I don't know. I've never tried that. Everyone tells me that I should try that. Anyone recommend a machine shop in East Oklahoma? Was told Tuesday that a motor machine for turbo won't be streetable. That's 100% not accurate. Sean, you're trying to decide your rear end gears? Why would you run a 12? How would it go from, how would you have a better 60-foot time and a slower ET? Are you having to shift or something into a different gear? You would need to keep the boost and timing down and a very good intercooler, but not the best combination. Oh, you're talking about the high compression. That's why I'm picking up the block from the shop. Yeah, that's obviously the guy doesn't know. I mean, we can run boost on stock motors, so it doesn't. Boost is fine. In fact, if anything, the complete opposite of that is true. The nice thing about turbos is we can run small, mild cams on them and still make lots of power. So if anything, the turbo combination would be way more drivable than any sort of big cammed NA combination. Pineapple pizza. No, I love pineapple, but not on pizza. Katie, you're running 20 pounds with 92 octane. Turbo is the best bet for Slant 6. It will definitely help you make power. The video's not frozen. That's just me. I'm not moving around. We will close out our poll at 75%. Turbo is the best bet for everything. It is. What's your question? You don't even have to tell me your question because boost is the answer. And on that note, it is time to go. I'm working on another turbo video that will be up tomorrow, and I will be back tomorrow night. Thank you guys all for showing up. Have a safe weekend and have a good Saturday night. Another Saturday night. And you know, but I do.